Welcome to the Scurry Church of Christ.org. The Bible says in Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Please don't let this happen to you. Feel free to contact us at scurrychurchofchrist.org, where you can visit us, and any Bible question that you may have, we will do our best to answer. We are so glad you decided to visit us. Morning. Growth in the Lord is very interesting, and the Bible is very practical when it comes to growing. There are many people who have changed their life. I want you to turn to Colossians chapter 3. They have changed themselves, and they used to live certain ways or think certain ways, but they have changed. And they will tell you that it takes work. It's easy not to change things and the things that needs to be changed. It's easy not to do that. And so many times we accept it. It's like a bad habit. It's easy to accept it, but it's going to take work to change. And so God understands that. And so when you look at the Bible is very practical when it comes to making progress. But we're talking about spiritual progress, because a person can change and still lose his soul. A person can work on himself and break habits, but still be lost. And so the changes that we're talking about these are spiritual changes, but it takes work. It takes training. It takes strength to do what God requires us to do. He knows that. And so I want you to notice Colossians chapter 3. We'll stay here, move around just a little bit. And I want to look at this and watch how this works. And I want you to think about things that maybe you need to change, or people that need to change, and people that are listening, they can learn from this, and this is how it should be done. Now notice this, and as I mentioned last week, there is a goal, and for a person to want to change or to become a better person, there must be an objective. But you must be sincere. That's why sometimes when people, they go through trauma, or they lose everything, and they realize that I need to change, and that change is a goal. They become sincere about it. You see, and the goal, the objective, they're sincere about the objective, and because they're sincere, they work on the things that needs to be worked on. So notice here, he says, therefore, in verse 1 of chapter 3, therefore, if you have been raised with Christ, see, if that's the case, I want you to notice a few words. Keep. Now, we're talking about changing, working on myself. Keep. See, therefore, if you have been raised with Christ, this is what you need to do. Keep seeking those things, the things above. That's keep. Now, I want you to notice these words. Keep seeking the things above. So that's what I need to keep doing, and that's on my mind. That's what I'm keeping. I keep seeking the things above. That's the objective. I keep the objective. I keep the goal. I keep this. What is it? Where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. That's the goal. See, notice this. So that's the objective there. I'm keeping that. That's where I want to be. Then he says in verse 2, set. Look at verse 2 if you have your Bibles. Set. So I set your mind on the things above. See that? You see the word keep seeking the things above. Then it says set. In other words, I'm not going anywhere. That's my objective. I'm keeping and I'm setting my mind on these things. That's the objective. See, there's nothing else that matters to me. And see, that's the goal. That's the objective. And that's what happens when people succeed, because they're sincere about the goal, the objective. That's why they succeed. If they're not sincere about the goal, if they're not sincere about the objective, they're not going to succeed. They're not going to do the things that need to be done to change. They first have to be sincere about the objective. And that's why I said, and see, that's what he says, therefore, if you have been raised with Christ, that's the case. You are baptized for the remission of sins. God's added you to his kingdom. So now you have become a Christian. God cleaned you up. Now you keep. See, you walk by faith and not by sight. See, keep seeking. Don't stop. Those things where? Above. That's the goal. I'm trying to get there. I want to get there. Well, I set your mind on things above. There it is again. Not on, watch this. Watch this. Watch. Not on the things that are on earth. See, the goal doesn't change. The objective doesn't change. So when I become a Christian, that's who I am. That's the objective. And so I'm not going to let the world deceive me. If I let the world deceive me, then it's going to interfere with my objective, my goal. So I'm not going to be deceived. Now he'll tell us how not to be deceived. Very interesting. Because as I battle in this world, as I live in this world, there are many things that can take away me thinking about my objective, and the world can do that. But he's saying, no, you keep it. You set your mind on it, not the world. He said, and remember this, for you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ. This you're a new person now. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. That's where you are. That's where you are, and that's where you need to be. When Christ, who is our life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. See, that's the objective. See, don't let the world deceive you, because you've learned these things and you know these things. And so when Christ, who is our life, that's your life now. See, there's a different lifestyle we live now. It's not the same. But remember, when he is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. That's the objective. Don't lose it. Stay focused. Then he says, watch this. Okay. Verse 5. Therefore, consider the members of your earthly body as dead. See? And so if I want to understand that, if there's the objective and the goal is to succeed, there are some things that has to die. I mean, if we take this, if we make it practical, if a person is living in drinking much alcohol, he's an alcoholic, or she's an alcoholic, and so in order to succeed, the goal has to be, I don't want to do those things anymore. It's affecting me, it's affecting my body, it's affecting my family, it's affecting my soul. And something has to go. The person has to die to alcoholism. That makes sense. And so I have to die. Those things are dead to me. And when something is dead, they no longer exist. And so I also have to die to the fellowship. I can't fellowship with those people who cause me to sin against God, or who causes me to do those things. See, now my life is hidden with Christ because I have died to those things. I put those things away. But it takes work. Because as I die to those things are still in existence. And so I have to set my mind. See that in watch verse 2. See, in order to function, in order to make this happen, he says, set your mind on things above. See, there's the mind. See, once the mind is right spiritually, then I can handle the other things. So that's the thing, getting my mind right. It's the mind. That's the mind that has to be right. When the mind is right, then everything else falls in place. But the work is changing my mind. That's why it says, set your mind on things above. Keep seeking those things. That's what the mind. See? So verse 5 again, therefore consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality. They're dead. impurity, passions, evil desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatry. Die to those things. Set those things aside. They're dead. Work on it. Why? For because, notice this. Notice the why, and notice the incentive to do this. For it is because of these things. What things? The immorality, the impurity, the passion, the evil desire, the greed, the idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of God will come upon the sons of disobedience. And see, now notice in verse 1, therefore, if you have been raised with Christ. See, I haven't been raised with Christ, so those I have escaped the wrath of God. I have escaped the wrath of God. And so those things now are put to death. I used to walk that way. I used to do those things, but now they're dead. They're separated from me. See? And the incentive is verse 6. For it is because of these things, the things that you used to do or been involved in, the wrath of God will come upon the sons of disobedience. That's not me anymore. But it's going to take some work. Now watch, it's not easy. Here's in verse 7. And in them you also once walked. See, but now you see that once walked. They were active in these things, but you no longer do those things anymore when you were living in them. I don't live in them anymore. You were living in them. Christianity is putting those things to death. I don't live in them anymore. I live another way. My life is hidden with Christ. And see, the problem is sometimes with Christianity, people try. It's like it's a struggle because I want to keep those things. I really have put those things to death, and so now I'm back and forth. It's a struggle because it's hard. I have to put them to death. I can't keep them anymore. So now my life is all dedicated to God. See? He verse 8, but now you also put them all aside. Anger, I'm a different person. Wrath, malice, slander, abuse of speech from your mouth. See? Do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices. I have put them to death. When I'm baptized for the remission of sins, I'm born again, John chapter 3. God has forgiven me for my sins. He has cleaned me. He cleaned me up. What sins? Those deeds. Those deeds, the things that I was doing, the things that I used to do that were contrary to the will of God, that are still contrary to the will of God. And so I put them, that's why I wanted forgiveness because of my sins. And so understand, and when I become a Christian, those things should be dead to me. And now I'm working on making sure they stay dead to me. And so to be baptized for the remission of sins and not put those things away, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. There's no spiritual growth. See, something has to die in order for me to have progress. And the problem is, again, when we try to keep those things we should die to, it's like, because it takes work to get, God understands it takes work to get rid of those things. But the goal is, I am dead to that. I am dead to you. I am dead to you. I am dead to that thing that makes my life miserable. It's like you have to tell some people sometimes, you're dead to me. You have to tell some friends sometimes, you're dead to me. Some fellowships, sometimes you're dead to me. Some places I used to go, in other words, you're dead to me. I don't do those things anymore, but if I try to keep those things, it's going to be hard for me to progress spiritually. That's what he's saying. You have to be dead to those things. Paul was dead to Judaism. He was showing the difference between Judaism and Christianity, but he died to that lifestyle. He couldn't do it to keep both. One had to go. That's the thing. Now watch what he says here. But notice watch this. Verse 10, and have put on new self. See, I took something off, I threw something away, but I'm putting something else on. That's growth. Do we understand that? I put something off, and like I'm dead to this, but I'm alive to this over here. It's it's. I want you to grasp that I'm dead to this over here. So and when I'm dead to something, and instead of just doing nothing, well, I'm putting on this over here. So I'm taking something off and I'm putting something on. That's work. And God knows it. But I want you to grasp that I have to die to it, and if I die to it and don't do anything to do something about it, then it's just empty, and then I'll probably go back to what I used to do. That's just logic. That's logic. Because I'm doing nothing. I'm dead to something, and I'm doing nothing. And so now that I'm dead to that, I separate myself with that. I'm doing something. There's something else that I'm doing to make sure I don't do those things that I'm dead to. And that's what he's saying here. See, he said, and have put on new self, who is being renewed, what? To a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created him. Notice that. And have put on the new self. I took something away, it's dead to me, but I'm putting on the new self. What new self? Who is being renewed to a true knowledge. What knowledge? According to the image of the one who created him. Now listen to this, Acts 20 and 32. The word of his grace is able to build you up and give you an inheritance among all them which are sanctified. See that? The word of his grace, which is able to build you up. And that's what he's saying here. And put on the new self, who is being renewed to the true knowledge according to the image of him who created him. Now watch this. Now notice that true knowledge, the word of his grace, which is able to build you up. So I'm putting that on. And that's why he says, watch this. Watch this. He says in verse 16, watch. Now, look at verse 10 again, then verse 16. And have put on the new self, who is being renewed, see, to a true knowledge, according to the image of the one who created him. That's what we get from the gospel, right? And so he knows. Now he just said in verse 1, therefore, if you have been raised with Christ, keep seeking those things above. He said in verse 2, set your mind on the things above. See? Now watch. Therefore, he says in verse 16, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. That's the thing that I'm doing. So when I'm studying and I'm being active, I'm getting my mind ready to tackle those things that I need to tackle. I'm getting my mind ready. And so it's like I put them away. In order to keep them away, it's going to take some work, because I have to let the word of Christ dwell in me richly. In order to let the word of Christ dwell in me richly, I have to do studies to show myself approved unto God. I have to search the scriptures daily. I have to hunger and thirst for righteousness. And see, once I let the scriptures take over my mind, that's going to do things that's going to help me handle things I need to handle. Because I'm doing something, I didn't put those things to death. And so now I'm doing something to keep my mind right. Understand that. I want you to grasp that. It's easy for me to say I'm not doing those things anymore. And I said it last time. You know how it is, and I do it a lot. It's like once I have a full meal, I'm full. I think I'm really good, a great diet tomorrow. And you ever tried that? That's what we do. It's like I think I'm going to become a vegetarian. And that's been on my mind for a while, but it's just not easy. And I think I'm going to start eating vegetables next week, and once I had a huge steak. And then once you try it, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. And so what do? What is it? You talk to people who became vegetarians, and what do? They'll tell you they took baby steps. See, they got their mind. They took baby steps, and they stayed away from this, and it's different techniques to do that. It's not easy. But notice what I just said. If they don't just stop eating all this strange meat. What do? They stop, but then they fill it in with something else. And it's a logical concept. And so if I want to stop, he says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another, see, with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Now, watch this. If I want my mind to be right and be directed by the gospel, see, I want to set my mind the way it should be set. He says, whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Watch this. Giving thanks to him, to God the Father. See? So whatever I do now, and now I put that to death. Those things are dead to me. And so now I'm really studying. Watch this. I let the word of Christ dwell in me. It's who I am. It's taking over my mind, which is going to help my actions, right? And I recognize that now because I want to be saved. My objective is to please God. And so whatever I do, I want to have authority scripturally to do that. And I don't have authority to do the things that I used to do. There's no scriptural authority. And if I do those things that I used to do, the results of that is the wrath of God. And I have escaped that. I don't want to do that anymore. You see, he makes it very simple. Then watch this in verse 15. Let the peace of God, watch this. Let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. See, it's ruling in your heart. That means even though it's not easy to have a peace that passes all understanding. See? Watch this. Verse 12. So as those who have been chosen by God, holy, beloved, put on. Here we go again. I'm putting something on. What am I putting on? Now, watch this. He just said watch this. He said in verse 9, he says, verse 8, but now you also put them all aside, anger, wrath, malice, slander, abuse of speech from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices. And then you get here. Watch this. He says, so as, verse 12, so as those who have been chosen by God, holy and beloved, put on. So I put off the anger, but what do? I put on compassion. See, I put off the anger. See, I put off the wrath, but I put on kindness. See, I put away the slander, but I put on humility. See, I put away the malice, but I put on gentleness and patience. See, that's it's easy to not grow. It takes work to grow, and that's just a reality. And that's why some people don't want to grow, is they don't want to work. Because sometimes we've gotten content with doing what we feel comfortable with and being happy with ourselves. And even though it may be affected spiritually, we're satisfied with that. And so instead of changing it, it's like instead of eating right, it does take work to eat right. We know that. And so in other words, instead of me eating right, and forgive when I say this, and I know quite a few people that, and I'm not picking on anybody, but they'd rather, instead of eating right and doing the right thing, they'd rather take medication every day for their diabetes. And that's just, and I realize that. I have people that's like, how many of you guys taking medication? But I look, they just keep eating what they want to eat. And so, because it takes work. So it's easy for me to keep taking the pill and that's easy. But it's going to cause some damage at the end. And we have to understand that people have to understand that it takes work to change. It takes work to change habits. And he's given us the remedy here. Put on. Take off and put on. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all. See, there's active. I'm being active. See, do all. There's activity there. Do all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Giving thanks to him, to God the Father. That's being active. I'm active. I'm doing something about it. See, put on. See, that's doing something. The heart of compassion, the kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. See, that put it on. Forgiving each other, verse 12. Verse 13, forgiving each other. I mean, that's it takes work. Now let's close with back to the goal, the objective. Verse 23, whatever you do, watch this. Do your work. Notice it's all activity. Nobody changes by sitting around. Nothing happens by sitting around. My life doesn't change by sitting around. That's true. I mean, that's just reality. Nobody changes by sitting around. People who, you notice one thing I learned about people, I watch people who are successful in the world. And I've watched, and I've noticed them that I know that are successful. They're successful in the world when it comes to finances and things, are very successful. And I thought one day, as I thought about these particular people, and you watch them, they don't waste time. They don't waste time. They're always active, doing something, and they're always doing something to improve whatever they're doing, and they're always doing something. They're active mentally and physically, and I noticed that a lot of times what happens, they don't have time to do things that are worthless because they're too busy. And then they all have their stories that they can tell you their story. I know one man said, I started off cutting grass, and I used to do this, and I had to take care of my family, and it's like now I can't sit down. I'm always working. Very successful, but he has a story. And I watch him. He doesn't waste time. You watch him. He doesn't waste time. Every morning he gets up. This is what they do. This is what happens here. This is what happens here. And now they get it. It's like now he gets a chance to relax, but he has a story. And it's like because of the work ethics, he began to grow. But he was focused. See, a lot of times spiritually we are wasting time. We're not using our time wisely. We're not using it in a way to grow. We're wasting it. What do I do every day? What do I do spiritually every day? Do I try to teach people? Am I an example of people? What am I doing for my mind spiritually? What kind of works am I doing for the Lord? What am I doing? And what's my daily schedule? Is God getting any time? Am I growing, but am I growing spiritually? See, that's the key. It takes work. It takes work and it takes faith. As I said this morning in Bible class, what is faith if I know everything? What is faith if I know everything? I've never seen the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I've never seen a resurrection, but I don't know how God's going to just change it, just from a twinkle of an eye, just change it. I don't know how that's going to work, but I believe it's going to happen. What is faith if I know everything? You see, and so the point is that when I'm changing myself or working on myself and do what God requires me to do, I have to have faith that He's going to lead me in the right direction. If not, then what is it? So let me close with this. And it's true this time. Watch this. Verse 23. Whatever you do your work heartily. Notice the activity. As for the Lord, rather for men. That's the activity. It's a spiritual growth. It's not a worldly growth. Watch this. Knowing that from the Lord you will receive. That's the incentive. The reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. Watch this. And here's another incentive. For he who does wrong will receive the consequences of the wrong which he has done, and that without partiality. You reap what you sow. So the incentive is focus on what you need to focus on as saints, and that's what God requires us to do. Remember, we're going to receive an inheritance that no one can take away. And so my goal should be to reach that, not earn it. I can't earn it. But my goal is to prepare myself to be with Christ, to satisfy God. And so at the end of the day, at the end of time, He can say, job well done, my faithful servant. That's my goal. Without that goal, what am I? Solomon figured it all out at the end. Solomon had everything, had 600 and something wives. He had everything. And realized it was all nothing. Because when he left this earth, he said, the spirit returns to God who gave it. So what's more important? If we can help you this morning, please come out and stand and sing a song for the invitation.
There should bring